Hello comrades, Commissar Bro here today, and I'm gonna give a short little review of Gladius, Relics of War. That's right. As you see, I started a new little game here, but I'm not actually gonna fully play through on this one. I pretty much just want to give my thoughts and opinions that I've played so far of Gladius, Relics of War. I've put over 15 hours or so into the game, which for the most part, and for a 4X strategy game and a war game, is actually not a lot of time. So, you know, I guess it's safe to say that I don't have a fully fleshed out opinion. So you could almost say this is an early review of what I've played so far. So, with that said, what are my opinions of the game? How do I feel about the factions? How do I feel about the overall direction of the game? And the core mechanics as they stand that I've played thus far. My overall opinion of it is actually very positive, and the more that I play the game, the more that I like it. At first, I'm going to be honest, at first I was kind of skeptical. I didn't really care much for the core style of the game. Full disclosure, this game is very similar to Pandora First Contact, which is a game I actually adored when it first came out. It was just so much better than Sid Meier's Beyond Earth, like Civilization Beyond Earth, if you ask me. It was like 10 times better. It was just a much better game. It stuck more to kind of Civ 5, and, you know, it had diplomacy and so on and so forth. So I liked it. I very much enjoyed it. Now, enter this game. It's very, very similar on a core level as Pandora First Contact. I even believe it's made on the same engine. So that's a good thing, but it does lose a few things that kind of made Pandora cool, like the fully customizable units and stuff like that. That's something I actually really miss, and I'm kind of sad that that wasn't more of a feature in this game. But again, it being Warhammer 40k, you know, there's plenty of different units to choose from, so you don't even really need all that unit customization as far as it goes. So, further points to be had. Now, I'm kind of disappointed in the fact that there's really not an army painter. I was kind of expecting there to be a little bit more of a customization of, for example, if you're playing the Space Marines, getting to actually choose what your individuals look like. That's really what I wanted, because, I mean, who doesn't like that? Ever since Dawn of War had the army painters in the original game, it's kind of just been something that you want and hope is going to be in every single 40k game. But unfortunately, actually the vast majority of them don't even have it. They do have some form of customization where you can play as a specific chapter or army and so on and so forth. But as for actually customizing your units, it seems almost exclusive to any of Relics titles involving Warhammer 40k that you actually get to do that. And it's a shame that it's not more of a thing in more of their games. So that's kind of a small thing, though. For the most part, the game's mechanics are solid, and it's fun. And the more you play it, the more fun it gets. It's actually interesting experimenting with all the different factions and really seeing the differences and nuances between them. Honestly, I kind of feel like that there's enough variety between all four of the factions that it kind of makes them more interesting to play than, say, if you're playing Civ 5, and how all the factions, although they have a few passives and a couple of unique units here and there, they all kind of relatively feel the same. In this game, it's not so much. This takes far more of an endless legend approach with all the differences in the factions, and that, in my opinion, is a huge strength. It actually makes the Imperial Guard focus on mass units and eventually get into artillery and more heavy vehicle units. I like that. Watch out, the Commissar's coming. And like the Necrons really feel like an undying, you know, legion of robotic Terminators just going in to completely demolish everyone they can, which is pretty freaking awesome, if I do say so myself. So the core mechanics of the game in that respect, the differences between the factions is all wonderfully fleshed out, and honestly probably the biggest thing when it comes to complementing this game is all the differences between those factions. The other major pro I have for the game is I really like the combat. I like the differences like in the range combat and the fact that there's melee, Most units tend to have range, so it's a heavy focus, but being further away makes units less accurate. So you can kind of see more of the wargame roots there, where the closer your guys are, the more damage they do. And that's actually shown through some of the abilities on the actual tabletop. Like you see here, rapid fire increases the attacks at half range. Rapid fire in the actual game pretty much does the same. It means you can fire twice instead of just firing once if the enemy are within half range of you. And it's an incredibly useful ability, almost devastating. One way you could kind of look at it is like cavalry charging into a musket line. The closer they get, the more devastating that shot's going to be. So it's almost like wait to the last second, wait till you see the white of their eyes, as it were, to be able to actually take them down. So that's kind of a nice ability, and I like that touch on the tabletop. I really enjoy the combat as a whole. I like the fact that there's a morale system. I like that there's actually levels and experience you get with damage and morale and hit points all increasing as your units level up. I like that there's actually a pretty strong difference between units, although fundamentally all they are either ranged or melee, or, you know, some form in between, like a magic user or even an ambivalent user who uses both. So that's cool, and I like that. But you can really tell, aside from just the unit models, that there's a difference in play style between them. For example, these guardsmen starting out, they have really low morale, but they actually have high hit points, and the reason why is because there's more models. So there's more men to take the shots for them. Now, their weapons tend to be weaker than, say, the Necrons in a one-on-one fight, and more than likely, unless guardsmen are entrenched or backed up, they're probably going to lose. And it really shows itself. And then, like I said, with the Necrons being able to heal themselves, the Space Marines being able to not break in combat. Their morale is never lost, which is actually probably one of my favorite abilities, right behind the Necrons. I love the fact that the Space Marines do not retreat. In so many games, Space Marines are shown as having morale, which is just kind of not a thing. That's not a thing. Space Marines don't really run away with fear. They may tactically retreat because they see that they would be better suited in backing up and choosing better ground to fight, or not throwing their lives away needlessly, which sounds like a Space Marine. What does not sound like a Space Marine is someone who their morale is broken and they're running away. That makes no sense and is completely ridiculous in my opinion. Even based on everything I've seen in the lore, it just doesn't make sense. Space Marines just don't retreat. Unless, again, it's for tactical reasons. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense. So that's something that's really nice about that. They've really kind of etched out a difference between the factions, and that's something I love. And oh my god, I love that my little Astra Militarum city here is just blasting away at this Ambull. That's pretty cool. Something else I kind of enjoy in a almost comical way, I believe, maybe without intending to, they've done a better job of kind of showing the wackiness of the universe just by having all of these different factions and creatures hanging out in the background. That's something I really, really like. For example, these Anbulls. The fact that there's Anbulls, there's freaking Crew Hounds, there's Tech Priest Engine Seers, and Castellan Robots, and I don't know if I already said Enslavers, but Enslavers and Catachan Devils, all on the same planet. Like, what the hell? That makes no sense by any stretch of the lore. And then you add on the fact that this is also a Necron Tomb world. The Space Marines are here, the Astra Militarum are here, and the Space Marines and the Astra Militarum are fighting against each other. It's just one wacky little clusterfuck is the best way to put it. And personally, I actually kind of like that. Now, I do wish that there was a little bit more of a diplomacy system in the game. Now, I can understand why at first glance, Warhammer 40,000 is all about war. There's no diplomacy, but there actually is. There's a lot of situations in the Warhammer 40,000 universe where pretty much unexpected allies have to stand and fight together because of a greater threat. Generally, Tyranids. That's generally what makes the forces of all these armies who hate each other's guts stand together and fight. Now, this game doesn't have any Tyranids, so it makes sense, but still, the point remains. You have the Astra Militarum and you have Space Marines. Now, you can team them up at the beginning of the game, but again, you can't really do any diplomacy. So, in my opinion, I'm kind of sad that there isn't any type of diplomacy, because I believe that's a lost opportunity. There could have been a really cool mechanic in there, say for the orcs, where you can hire out the orcs as almost mercenaries, promising them something to go fight a target, because ultimately that happens in the lore. There's plenty of examples, especially in older lore, where the Imperium of Man would actually get orc mercenaries to defend planets or whatnot if, you know, they just didn't have enough troops to do. You don't see that really in the new lore, but I mean, you know, the old lore was definitely a lot more wild and free in how it handled a lot of different things. Needless to say, there is opportunity for there to be diplomacy between these factions. Even the Necrons and the Space Marines at one point fought together, the Blood Angels and the Silent King fighting once again against the Tyranids. But I mean, that's neither here nor there. So again, having some minimal form of diplomacy would have been kind of nice. The fact that you can team up is kind of a good thing. It's definitely a lot better than if you couldn't at all. I'm not going to lie, if you couldn't actually team up at all at the beginning, I would be pretty upset. But again, the idea that the Astra Militarum and the Space Marines are fighting each other without, pretty much with wild abandon is kind of ridiculous. But at the same point in time, they explain it pretty well in the actual story that you play through, to where it's like, okay, I can look past this. The Space Marines pretty much view these guys as traitors, and they're just going to wipe them out. And you know what? That's good enough for me. I dig it. I'll take it. Who cares? Ultimately, it's not about the lore. It's about a 4X strategy game. And again, really kind of hitting that part on the head. This is a good game. It's definitely a lot of fun, and it is a great start. That's also one thing I want to put out. It's an absolutely wonderful start to a series of games that could ultimately be very interesting. Or maybe not a series of games, but even just a start for future DLC, which I would absolutely love to see. A lot of people are, you know, are like, ugh, there should just be more factions straight off the bat. I actually feel like there's more variety here in the 4 factions that exist in the game right now than in some other 4X strategy games I've played. And I mean, even Endless Legend didn't have a gigantic roster of factions at first start. Now, and honestly, this game per faction has more units than Endless Legend has, or at least when it first came out. So I think we should be a little bit more forgiving on that front. Each faction has a well kind of fleshed out unit system. Even just looking at the tech tree, I mean, we know that we have guardsmen just on the first one. If we sit here and go down the line, here's another unit, the Primaris Psyker, and then there's different abilities that comes with it. Building the Cult Mechanicus allows us to build Tech Priests, Engineers, and Castellan Robots. So that right off the bat is 4 units. And then if we keep going down, there's a 5th unit, there's a 6th unit, there's a 7th unit, and I mean, that's only tier 3, and we keep going and going, there's an 8th unit, there's a 9th unit, then there's the ability to build actual fortifications, bastions, and so on and so forth. We keep going and there's more and more units. So as far as I'm concerned, each faction has a wide variety of different ways and playstyles to actually accomplish your goals, which ultimately is all about war, which, you know, that's what Warhammer 40,000 is known for, and I think this game does that pretty well, all things considered. I mean, from my experience so far, I gotta say the combat and just some of the wars I've already played out have been very memorable, just by the fact of the AI seems to, whether it's smart or just realizes when it's losing, that in itself is a huge deal. And maybe I've just played a lot of games lately where it seems like AI is stupid, you know, like for example the Total War games. Love the Total War games, but the AI is not the best, and you can't help but notice they're just not smart enough to take on human players. So that's one thing that's refreshing about this game, is the AI gets it. They just understand when they're not winning a fight, and they will try to back off, especially if they can't handle you. But they will catch you by surprise and take advantage of your mistakes. If you, honestly, if you totally F up and the enemy catches you off guard, they will punish you for it. And that's something I actually really like. So, But anyway, I could keep going on. There's plenty of things I have to say about the game. There's actually lots of opinions I have in regards to it, but I'd be here all night talking about it. The main gist I really want to get on is I think overall this is a good experience. I believe it's a simple enough game for people to pick up and start playing. You know, again, it does have that one more turn mentality. If you're asking me what I would have preferred, I am kind of more in line of I wish they would have gone for a grander scale. I wish there would have been more space oriented. Like, again, if you've ever played Chapter Master, that's really what I was kind of hoping for. But this is actually still a great Warhammer 40k game compared to a lot of stuff we've gotten recently. I think this is an absolutely wonderful one. And I dare say, if I continue playing it like the way I've been playing it, I could see this as being one that, you know, really, it's one that I continue to come back to repeatedly over and over again, because just the core mechanics of it are simple, easy. It's easy to pick up. It's easy to play. You can get quite a few turns into it. I do kind of wish they had a quick combat option. I don't know if they've added that in yet. Let's actually check real quick and see. Scroll acceleration, auto cycle units, show performance, show tips. Nah, it doesn't look like it unless I'm just missing it, which is entirely possible, let me tell you. I miss things all the time. How am I only playing this game on medium graphics? What am I doing with my life? Anyway, so thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope this review kind of helps you on choosing if you think this game's worth buying or not. My opinion is yes, I do believe it is. And supporting the game is only going to lead to more factions and more content in the future, which at this point I'm all for paying for. I can't wait to see what else we get in the future. Anyway, this has been CB, and I'll see you next time.